It seems that sometimes the poorer a country is, the worse its state of security. So does that mean that poverty is the main security issue facing Africa?
Proposing the motion, we have Olympic School, and they tell their opponents that they should bring their A game. Opposing the motion, we have Dagoretti High School, and they say they are here to point out common sense.
The motion this week is, poverty is the most important security issue facing Africa. Proposing the motion, Olympic High School. Opposing the motion, Dagoretti High School.
Each contestant has 3 minutes to make their submissions. The audience also gets a chance to put their questions to each team. Each side will have an additional 1 minute to make a final statement. The judge's decision is final. The winning school will get an ICT chill-out zone with the widescreen TV, computers, webcams, and internet connection. The teacher from the winning school gets 100,000 shillings courtesy of Chase Bank. The winning students each get a tablet courtesy of Safaricom, a gift hamper from Unilever, and a gift hamper from mimi.co.ke. And together they all win the title, The Great Debaters. May the best school win.
Proposer number 1, you have 3 minutes to give your opening remarks.
I would like to propose the motion, poverty is the most important security issue facing Africa. Mahatma Gandhi once said, there are people in this world so hungry that God cannot appear to them except in the form of bread. The question is here, what is poverty? Poverty, it is a state of being insufficient or inferior in amount. And this is the exact reason why we like to look at poverty in terms of intellectual poverty. Intellectual poverty and not material poverty leads to political instability. We would like to take a case study of few nations. Let's take a case study of Uganda. In Uganda, we have the Lord's Resistance Army that is being led by Joseph Kony. He wants to enforce the biblical 10 commandments in Uganda. He justifies the killing of innocent people according to biblical stories. This is like the Noah's flood and the destruction of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. They are perverting the scriptures of the Holy Bible. And this just, ladies and gentlemen, without a doubt, it shows how intellectually impoverished he is. Kony, ladies and gentlemen, uses 104,000 child soldiers, I stress on child soldiers, ladies and gentlemen, to try and overthrow the government of Uganda. And this led to political instability in Uganda. It's just so funny, ladies and gentlemen. Kony and his army believe that wearing of crosses makes you immune to bullets. Ladies and gentlemen, does wearing of crosses actually make you immune to bullets? I do not think so. So, the question is, how lost could these people be? I also leave that upon your judgment. Lastly, Kony actually stresses on male dominance. And this, ladies and gentlemen, actually affects how gender equality is stressed in Africa. And this is why I say intellectual poverty and not material poverty leads to political and religious conflicts, begging to show that how poverty is not the most important issue here. We are looking at intellectual poverty. Thank you.
First opposer, you may take 3 minutes to give us your opening remarks.
Kelvin Moli from Dagoretti High School, standing here viciously to oppose the motion that states that poverty is the most important security issue facing Africa. I'm very annoyed this morning because this time we're wasting here, we could be used in doing more important things, trying to point out common sense. Even our fellow proposers don't even understand the motion. What is poverty? Poverty is the inability to acquire basic needs. On to my first point, civil wars. Civil wars are wars that emerge within a country due to various reasons. A good example, in DRC, there has been civil war and it has displaced many people, and refugees have been living in deplorable conditions, and they've been living in poor conditions because of civil wars. So it's not poverty to single out. It is to deal with civil wars, and poverty will be unheard of. On to my second point, population. As we all know, since independence, most of the African countries' population has doubled. Therefore, the amenities are not enough to cater for everyone. A good example is here in our own city, Nairobi, and in other cities such as Cairo, Pretoria, Johannesburg, and the likes of many others. People live in shanties. People lack proper healthcare because of population expansion. So if we deal with population pressure, poverty will not be there. Good conditions will be there. On to my third point. Terrorism. Terrorism, these are organized attacks done by militia groups such as the Al-Shabaab, the Boko Haram, and the likes of many others. These terrorists discourage investors from investing in those countries. Therefore, the government will not have enough money to cater for the services to their citizens. Therefore, it is the terrorists who shy off investors from investing in those countries. So if terrorism is dealt away with, investors will invest, poverty will not be there, services will be there. Thank you.
Time now for rebuttals. From the proposing side, you have 3 minutes.
My name is Sheka Yunus from Olympic High School, and I'm here to propose the motion that states poverty is the most important security issue facing Africa. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the first opposer talked about terrorism in Africa. Now, I want to tell you something, dear, that these people, when practicing terrorism, do not mean that they are materially poor. What it means that the force behind them practicing these terror attacks is because of their religion. To my first point, when Kinyanjui was talking about poverty being a state of being inferior, is a state of being inferior or insufficient in amount and quality. Quality here comes in when we are going to define poverty in terms of intellectual poverty and not material poverty. When he was talking about religious intolerance, I want to give an example of Nigeria. Now, Nigeria, as we all know, there is a terror group known as the Boko Haram. Now, this Boko Haram comes from is a word from a Hausa language, meaning the Western education is forbidden. Now, ladies and gentlemen, is that true? We all of us go to school here, and we have seen the impact that studies has done to us. Now, how can we say that, how can these people actually, when they abducted over 250 girls, making them not to go to school so that they can get the basic education? What does this show? They're trying to deprive these young girls their right, and that is the right to go to school. Now, I'd like to talk about Central African Republic. Conflicts in Central African Republic has been on the headlines, and it started when the Muslim rebels known as the Seleka overthrew the government of a president called Francois Bozize, the president of Central African Republic. And the Christian group Anti-Balaka was formed to counter Seleka. Now, this is power struggle. Mark you, Central African Republic is not poor materially. When you look at Central African Republic, they have resources, but what they lack, what is hindering them from coming out of poverty is the kind of setup they have. These people are being made to actually fight and not consider the eradicating of poverty. They are intellectually poverty. The poverty is in their mind, not what they have. Now, intellectual poverty and not material poverty leads to ethnic division. Ladies and gentlemen, let's come back to our own country here, Kenya. We know that voting patterns during general elections are done along tribal lines. This means that if I come from a certain community, my people will vote for me, regardless of whether I have the policy that will make these people have what they need. Thank you.
Opposers, please give your rebuttal. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Abdallah Vincent from Dagoretti High School, and I'm here to oppose the motion that poverty is the most important security issue facing Africa. Now, I'd first start by addressing the issues that my esteemed guest mentioned. You mentioned that DRC is not a poor country. It is, in fact, the poorest country in Africa with a per capita income of $378. This data was obtained from the International Monetary Fund 2013. Now, she also mentioned that the terrorism that is occurring in various countries in Africa is because of religion. Exactly. When terrorism occurs, what happens? People are killed. People are forced to endure to certain conditions of living that are very deplorable. People are forced to lose their land. People are forced to lose what they've worked for, to lose everything that is them, that makes them them. Now, on to my first point. I would like to talk about extremism. Extremism in that political fanaticism or religious fanaticism. This is where you find that religious sects are fighting each other. You find that people are supporting a certain leader, are supporting them so much that they're willing to fight their brothers. They're willing to fight the very person that helps them to develop their community. They're willing to fight the very person that helps them to grow, to expand. On to my second point about coup d'etats. Coup d'etats, the most recent one being the one that happened in Egypt. The time that was spent during the coup d'etats could have been used to do more important and more economical things, improving the economy. The time that was spent by the people in the streets rioting to remove their leaders. May I ask you one question? Aren't there better methods of removing someone who you believe is not an efficient leader? On to my third point, poor administration. When countries are even given these foreign aids from the foreign nations, let me ask you a question. This money, where does it go to? Is all of it, do you believe that all of it is spent in the economy? I don't think so, because 2 years ago, we experienced the worst drought in 60 years. And the following year, we saw people, this is an example from Kenya, we saw people pouring milk. How? Why? Now, Albert Einstein defined insanity as doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. How can we stand here and say, poverty caused this, poverty caused that, instead of focusing on major issues, instead of focusing on things that are affecting this continent? Thank you.
May we have two questions from for the proposers, sorry.
I'm Diana Vua from Huruma Girls High School. I have a question to the proposing side. You say that the 250 girls from Nigeria were denied right to school. Is it right to school or right to education? Because I might go to school but not get educated, and I can acquire education without going to school. Thank you.
I'm Franklin Momanyi from Moi Forces Academy, and I require some clarity. Were the girls 219 girls or more than 250 girls? Thank you.
May we have questions for the opposers?
I'm Nani Lankas from Our Lady of Mercy, and I have a question. Don't you think that if we had more well-off people in Africa, we'll have less cases of insecurity? Because in the first place, most of the time, the reason why we have many people engaging in these core activities is because they are paid. The reason why you have people who are willing to cause violence is because they are paid. They earn a living through terrorism.
I'm Alfred Kamau from Aquinas High School. I have a question for Dagoretti. So how do you explain you said that population bring poverty. So how do you explain for China, which have 1 billion people, and I think it's the second biggest economy in the world?
Third proposer.
Elmer Dragan from Olympic High School, and I'd like to address the questions that were raised by the audience. Now, one member of the audience asked this question, how the rights and going to school are related. Now, I'd beg that to be more attentive when my fellow colleague was speaking. Now, you see, when somebody is kidnapped, it simply means that they cannot go to school. How would they expect to go to school yet they're kidnapped? The second question, somebody asked of the number of girls that were kidnapped in Nigeria by the Boko Haram militia group. The exact number is actually 250. Now, on this day, I'm quite perturbed by what our fellow opponents are trying to say. One of their speakers said that we gave the wrong statistics, but I beg to disagree because I wonder how a student, smartly dressed in a tie and in a coat, claims to say that Central African Republic is the poorest nation in Africa. McHugh, as per the statistics right now, it is Togo and not the Central African Republic. And McHugh also, we spoke about the DRC to reinforce our arguments. And when we started, we said that we look at the motion in terms of intellectual poverty. So to that effect, intellectual poverty and not material poverty leads to ethnic divisions. Let me take you back to Rwanda, what happened in Rwanda in 1994. Do you remember the genocide? How many people were killed? Millions, of course. And you see, even presently, nothing must have changed. Why am I saying this? Sudan, for example, is a country richly endowed with oil. But what is happening? There is ethnic division over this particular natural resource. Where is the problem, you may ask? Intellect, of course. And that means that the people in Sudan, or rather the leaders who are fueling these inter-ethnic conflicts, are basically purely and squarely intellectually poor. To the same effect, you see, when the conflicts broke out in Sudan, it was majorly blamed on the radio broadcasts that were being aired. And this shows that even the media fraternity in South Sudan is questionable. So ladies and gentlemen, as per this moment, do you really want to claim that poverty is the most important security issue facing Africa? Because from what you tell us is that we need to focus on larger things. Fine, you don't agree. But how can we focus on these larger things minus our intellect? McHugh, we are not some sort of sheep being led by a shepherd who is helpless and doesn't know the direction. We need to get it clear. If my mind is clear, I'll think straight. And that's why even Ananias Sn say that nature doesn't play dice. And for you to embrace nature, it means that you have to get it right down to your brains. Think it, internalize, and get the feel of what you speak about. Thank you.
Third opposer, you may respond. You have 3 minutes.
I would first like to counter-argue one of the points that was given by my opponent here. We didn't talk about the Central African Republic. My fellow colleague talked about the Democratic Republic of Congo. And he said that the Democratic Republic of Congo has a per capita income of about $378 in the current IMF database of 2013. And we find that DRC stands to be one of the poorest countries in Africa. Also, to one of the questions that was asked here, you asked about the poor people who are taking part in the civil wars, and you are talking about the civil wars. I mean, the funds that, the thing that is causing the poor people to be paid so that they can perform the civil wars, it is because of the poor governance that is existing. This poor governance, and there are other methods that can be used to counter the poor governance. Without the poor governance, the people could not be employed. They could not be paid to conduct the wars. So if there's this poor governance, then there are other methods that can be used to curb them. So you find that it is not for only that issue. So the money that is used to pay them can be used for other purposes. Now you see, onto the second point, there's a person who asked about China. China is outside Africa. We're actually talking about Africa. And China is also a developed nation. So you find that China, since it is developed, they have a high per capita income. And also you find that in Africa, all countries are third world, and we cannot provide for the general needs of the people, since poverty is the state of having insufficient basic needs. These basic needs include food, water, sanitation, and etc. So I would like to talk about climate change just to begin. Climate change is really a security issue. Most African countries depend on agriculture for their survival. Since if you take an example of Kenya, had not been for agriculture, we could have been behind. We have tea, which is grown in areas such as Meru. And we also have in Ghana, there is cocoa grown in Ghana. This earns them income. So when you have the climate change, there is an increased poverty. Because when you have climate change negatively, whereby there is, say, aridity is taking place in Africa, these people, they will have inadequate food. When you are not able to have inadequate food, you say you are poor, because poverty is the state of having insufficient basic needs such as food. Also, I like to talk about corruption. Corruption also affects the security issue. And therefore, due to corruption, whereby the funds brought out are being embezzled, we have poverty is not really the main issue. So these funds that are meant to cater for the education, to cater for sanitation, to cater for food, which are the basic needs, which may lead to poverty. We find that corruption is the main issue, not really poverty. Climate change is the main issue, not really poverty. Thank you.
We'll now get closing remarks from both team. A member of the proposers to take a minute and give us their final submission.
I would like to clarify something before I continue, is that we were speaking of the Central African Republic, but not the Democratic Republic of Congo. Well then, intellectual poverty and not material poverty leads to political and religious conflict. It all starts from the mind. Intellectual poverty and not material poverty leads to ethnic division. It all starts from the mind. Nothing has no cause, I repeat, nothing has no cause. It all starts from the mind. Well then, all this shows that if you're poor intellectually, your things cannot run straight. So let's get things straight here. If we get education, that is when we can now start to eradicate poverty, showing that intellectual poverty is really, and I repeat, is really the most important issue facing security in Africa. I'd like to leave you with a saying that says that, remember that there are people in Africa that they cannot see God unless he comes in form of bread. Thank you.
Opposers, you have a minute to give your final submission.
Oh God, should I laugh or pity the ignorance of our fellow proposers? They're suffering from a disease known as lack of information. It's like a battle of elephants against ants. They're playing the ants. It's poverty, it's the other issues first, then poverty will be solved. If we solve these other issues, will there be poverty? No, there will be no poverty. They don't even understand the motion. The motion is about poverty, not intellectual poverty. Poverty is a broad topic, not intellectual poverty. And to tell them the last thing, you can be good proposers only if the motion is negated. Thank you.
I will go straight to individuals, but first of all, I would like to commend Olympic. I think you took a very nice angle and stuck by it by saying that poverty is in the mind. And so that was very strong for you. For Dagoretti as well, you took your side of your view and stuck by it. And so for us, we judged you according to how you brought out your points out. I'll start with Olympic. Joseph, thank you so much for the good start. It was a very good start, especially with the quote and defining the terms. Then you brought in the aspect of intellectual poverty and you stuck by it, and your whole team as well, the whole team as well stuck by that. And I felt it was a commendable job. However, as a first speaker, I felt that you dwelt more on the Ugandan example. Maybe there could have been other examples as well. But your other speakers came and gave others. Shuka, good cross-examination when you come on stage, good mastery of language, good use of examples as well. However, I think you said something like intellectually poverty. So I think you meant intellectually poor. So it's good to note that. Regan, one word, good.
Dagoretti High School, very good team there. Kelvin, you start off really well, But I think when you came back to do the final submission, something went wrong. And remember that even as you debate a motion, whether you oppose or whether you're opposing what your opponents have said, I think we also want to mind our language so that we do not offend, other people. Abdallah, again, very good and calm speaker. I mean, you're a great public speaker. That was really, really good. I loved your composure. I listened to you throughout. In fact, I was wondering why you didn't speak longer, but anyway, time was up. Emmanuel, again, a good speaker, calm, composed. But what I really wanted to hear from Dagoretti High School, and this, was something that I waited for all the way to the end and up to the time when Kelvin came back to make the final submissions. If poverty is not the most important security issue facing Africa, then what is?
The judges saw it fit to give Olympic High School 72.5%. Please give them a hand. And Dagoretti High School got 71. That means Olympic High School are the winners.
It's not exactly the end for the team that has not won this time, because judging by the scores, they might meet the tally. So, from all of us here at the Great Debaters Contest, I am your host, Austin Nyambok.
And I am Mariam Bishar. We'll see you next time.
The winning school will get an ICT chill-out zone with the widescreen TV, computers, webcams, and internet connection. The teacher from the winning school gets 100,000 shillings courtesy of Chase Bank. The winning students each get a tablet courtesy of Safaricom, a gift hamper from Unilever, and a gift hamper from mimi.co.ke. And together, they all win the title, The Great Debaters. May the best school win.